So in this video I'll be working with my daughter to make a swift, which is a gadget that you put on the table to hold a skein of wool while you unwind it and re-roll it to make a ball that's useful for knitting. So basically what we're going to do is make a pair of crosses. These are a little prototype just to see how it all works. This will be the base, this will be the bit that rotates, and there will be holes, a line of holes with pegs to hold the skein. The overall size of the thing is going to be 600. The crosses will have arms 600, and that's worked out because of the size of a sample skein that we've got. But just looking at how we're going to do it, so these are some bits of hardware that I've made up to hold it all together. Basically we've got some 42 by 19 with these half laps. Bit of hardware, that was a half-inch UNC, half-inch UNF made out of some other sort of bolt. I used a lathe for doing that, but I think you'd be able to get away with using just a bolt and a Black & Decker and drill a hole through it. I don't think it needs to be that precise. Anyway, it goes through there. I'll be replacing this nut with something that looks a little bit more appropriate. This piece here, same deal, two pieces in a cross. This is a bit of 8mm rod, bit of thread on the end, and I pressed a disc on there, but I don't think it'd be too hard to come up with something like that, working with standard bolts and washers and things. And this is a standard bit of chair or table leg furniture. It's just I think you call them skein nuts. I'm not exactly sure about that, but anyway, you drill a hole in the wood, press it in, and you've got a metal thread which will take the nail thread, just held together like that. And I'll probably put a slot across the top here to take a small coin, something like that. And a set of holes and some pegs. So that's it. Now let's have a look at how I actually made the pieces. Alright, so we're working with some 600mm lengths of this 42 by 19. I've already actually cut the half lap groove here, channel, but I thought I'd show you the setup so you could see how I did it. So got a piece clamped obviously, and a backing piece here so that when the router bit comes out the back, it doesn't break off the back of the thing. So then it was just a matter of running it across and then moving it over to get the cut. So that first cut was for this side, and then moving it over to cut that. And you've got to remember when you do that, it isn't just a matter of moving it over the width of the channel that you want, because you're cutting on the other side of the cutter, and don't get caught out with that. But anyway, so that's how I did the half lap joints. And I tested to make sure I had the trench the right width, just using a bit of spare, and I was happy that I got quite a good fit there. So it managed to be quite a reasonable fit. So quite happy with that. And I made a second one in the same way. This was a bit of recycled timber, but hopefully by the time it's cleaned up and sanded it will be all good. Fill in a couple of holes. So anyway, that's the wooden crosses made. So now it's a matter of drilling the holes and fitting the hardware. Oh, and I'm probably going to have to round all the corners off, because the reason I made it all this way is so it can be pulled apart and stored easily when it's not being used. That's the reason why I've gone to all this trouble of making the hardware the way I have, but to make it so you can handle it and store it and all the rest of it, the idea is going to be to round all the corners off so there's nothing that can cause splinters or whatever else. Okay, well, I rounded the corners, so I rounded the ends on all of the pieces, and I've run the router with a little chamfering bit all the way around. It's quite easy to do. I didn't bother to do it with record me doing it because it's just noise. What's the point of that? But yeah, so that's done quite a neat job. So we're ready now for sanding and drilling some holes. So we'll unclamp it, perhaps have a slightly closer look. For that, using the router to do the half laps, produced a very neat job. Quite tight fit, so happy with that. Okay, well, unfortunately it's raining at the moment, but that's what happens sometimes. So as you can see, I've now put a couple of coats of that combined stain and varnish, which I didn't like on the blanket box, on here, and it's turned out a lot better on here than it did on the pine box. But this is Meranti, a much darker wood. It seems to have worked all right on that. So what I've done is to tidy all this lot up, and I've made a much neater looking brass nut. So that was just made out of a piece of 20mm or 19mm brass bar, drilled, tapped for 1/2 inch UNF, bit of knurling. First time I've done knurling actually, quite happy with the way that turned out, and it's a quite ergonomic setup, easy to get a bit of pressure on. Oh, and I've missed a spacer out. Made this spacer to a bit of extra clearance from the tabletop. This piece has been cleaned up and I put a screwdriver slot in the top. It's only finger tight, but in case it gets tight for some reason, it's a way to get it out. So quite pleased with how freely it runs. That's easily going to be enough for the job at hand. It's probably a disadvantage actually if it was too free, because you need to keep a bit of tension on the wool or the yarn while you're pulling it off. So I've also put some pads underneath so it stays up off the table to clear this metal. This is the she nut that the vertical post screws into, and I didn't want that scraping on the table, so these just have enough to keep it up clear of that, and also to stop it roaming around. So all that's left to do now is drill some holes for some vertical pegs. I've made up 4 pegs. Had to shave the ends to make them fit in the size hole that I could easily, well, the nearest hole I could match to the size of the peg. So now I've got to drill some holes in each of those 4 arms, and we're done. And I'll be doing that this afternoon. Okay, well here we are. 2 sets of holes for larger skeins and smaller skeins. Seems to have turned out just fine. I think the customer's happy, so I'm happy. And here it is in use. Well, thanks for watching the video, and I hope you found it interesting.